Welcome to this week's energy series. We are Peyton, Corey, and myself, Yaila. This week we are talking about Dark Night of the Soul. What is that? What does it look like? And what do you do? Oh, such a great topic for this time. Peyton, how about let's start with you?
Thanks, Yaila. Yeah, this is such a good topic for us to be talking about right now, because I think this is something that so many people are going through, and they might not have the vocabulary for it to know really what is happening to them. So I'm glad that we're going to take a look at Dark Night of the Soul. And so when I think of Dark Nights of the Soul, kind of two things come up for me. The first thing is, how do you recognize it? So you think you might be going through one, but what are some of the signs of a dark night of the soul? And then the second question, of course, is what do you do about it? So when I think about a dark night of the soul, it's something that's kind of hard for me to define. And so the way I like to think about it is when my higher self kicks my butt onto my spiritual path. And so that's kind of how it looked like for me. And I think this is one of those processes that's going to be very individual. So if you are going through something that doesn't exactly match what we described, that's perfectly fine. You kind of have to feel this in your gut to know if this is what is going on in your life. So some of the signs of my dark night of the soul, or some of the things that kind of trigger to me that a client might be going through a dark night of the soul. First of all, it seems to be when big things in your life are being ripped away from you or collapsing. So it may be that relationships are imploding, your career is derailing, maybe your health is unraveling. But for me, a dark night of the soul is something major. It is not that week where you're feeling a little off or a little down in the dumps. Your dark night of the soul, in my experience and what I've seen with most of my clients, is that it's a very severe or shocking time in your life where it seems like very extreme things are happening. Your whole life is kind of collapsing at the same time. If that is the kind of thing that you're going through, you may be in dark night of the soul territory. And another thing that might be a good warning sign for dark night of the soul is this is something that can last a while. My dark night of the soul lasted 3 years. And I think that's probably, I hope it is atypical for everyone's sake. But just know that this is, again, it's not that one day you feel kind of funky and then the next day you're back to normal. That was probably not a dark night of the soul. A dark night of the soul for me is when the universe or your higher self, however you like to look at it, is putting you on a major course correction. And so you're going to see things that are going to take you a little time to kind of work through them. So look for it to be very, very extreme, would be the word that I use for it, and to go on for a while. This isn't necessarily something you're going to overcome in a week or two or a day or two. So those are some of the things. I also notice with dark nights of the soul is that it tends to happen in a lot of people earlier in their spiritual journey. So for me, this is what actually put me on the spiritual path. I was in such a dark night of the soul for so long that I knew I was being redirected in a major way. I just didn't know what I was being directed to. So, with this, it was happening very early in my journey when I didn't have any tools. I didn't know how to heal. I didn't know what energy work was. And so a lot of people really get sucked under with dark nights because they don't yet have the tools to work through them. So that's another thing that if it's happening kind of earlier in your spiritual journey, that can be one of those signs that you're going through a dark night of the soul. And then the other thing that comes to mind for me is my dark night of the soul was very paralyzing. So it was one of those times where I knew I was being separated from something. In my case, it was my career. I had built my entire identity, my entire, concept of myself around this career that I worked 15 years to build. And the universe was telling me it was time to move on. And it was absolutely paralyzing because I had no plan B. So a lot of times in your dark nights of the soul, it can be very disorienting because you see what's not working anymore, you see what's collapsing, but you don't necessarily know what's filling in behind it. So it can cause these feelings of being disoriented, paralyzed, hopeless. For me, it put me into a really deep depression for a long time. So it's something that is going to be a major event in your life in most cases. So those are some of the things that I would describe as kind of signs that you can look for to see if what you're going through might be a dark night of the soul. So then what do you do about it? So say you're checking off these boxes as we go through them. You're like, yep, it's terrible. Yep, it's been going on a while. What do you do? Well, the first thing that I always recommend, and I like to look back at it and go, okay, what would I have done differently? Or how would I help my clients who are going through this same thing? The first thing that I would encourage you to do is to get help from someone who can help you see what you can't see. And so this is what turned around my dark night of the soul. Was I was so much at my wit's end, and it had gone on for so long that I went to my first psychic medium, which I never would have done in a million years under ordinary circumstances. But the beautiful thing was she could see what I couldn't see. She was the one who introduced me to energy work, told me that I was supposed to be doing, intuitive work and spiritual work. And this was a world I didn't even know existed. So if I had tried to fight my way out of my dark night of the soul by myself, I would probably still be shoveling, because I literally didn't know that my soul path even existed. So going to someone who is an intuitive coach, an intuitive teacher, can take so much time off of your recovery process, because they can connect with your higher self, with your guides, with your soul blueprint, and help you see what you can't see. And again, that's one of the most frustrating parts of a dark night of the soul, is you don't know what that next step is. So my first piece of advice, and something I wish I had done much sooner, is get help from someone who can see those parts of you that you can't see yet. The second thing that I would always recommend, and the three of us talk about this all the time, get energy tools. And so that's always great to be learning about spirituality and practice, to be hearing the concepts, watching the cute videos. That's all great, but you need concrete tools. You need the tools to help you move the energy, integrate the energy, and get it out of your space. So whoever you are resonating with as a teacher, make sure they're teaching you concrete tools. And if you need help with that, see our videos down below. We have tons of videos on how to do energy healing, some of the tools that we all recommend. So check those out if you know you're not really strong in the tool department. Then the third thing I would recommend, because I made this mistake myself, practice letting go. In your dark night of the soul, you'll be pretty clear on what is being removed from your life. Like, I knew that it was my career that was kind of being pulled away from me, or that I was being guided to move away from, but I held on. I dug my fingernails in, because I couldn't see an alternative. And when you can't see an alternative, we tend to cling to what is falling down. And all that happens is you get dragged behind the bus a lot longer. So my third suggestion, let go, surrender, trust that your higher self knows the next step, and the next step will be even better. And this all comes down to trust and faith. But it will make your dark night of the soul so much quicker to move through if you're not clinging to that thing that's burning down. So having learned that one the hard way, that's always something I recommend. And then finally, the last thing that is so incredibly valuable is healing. Whether that is learning a healing modality, going to take classes yourself if that is something that interests you, or just go to a healer. And there are tons of modalities out there. Go to whatever resonates with you, whatever you feel interested in. But the healer will be able to help move some of that stuck energy out of you that you don't have maybe the tools or the skills yet to move out on your own. So if you do those 3 or 4 things, you will move through your dark night of the soul more quickly and more comfortably. And you will be getting personal insights from a teacher or coach to help you navigate onto the path that you're supposed to be on, because it can be hard to find that when you're in the middle of your dark night and you're very traumatized, you're in pain, you are struggling. It can be hard to hear your intuition. That's why, again, I always recommend seek help from someone who can see what you can't at that particular moment. So that is how I would navigate a dark night of the soul if I had to do it over again. How about you, Corey? What's your experience then?
That was great, Peyton. I had the opposite, which, what you were saying was we all have it differently. And so for me, dark night of the soul, gosh, I thought I was going crazy. I did. I thought it was kind of crazy. For me, I had an extreme heightened anxiety. And I now know that I was not in my body at all. And I was going through a really horrific time. It wasn't a career change. It was a relationship change. But oh my gosh, I couldn't focus. I actually was a little extra hyper, but that was the anxiety. My senses, I could feel that something was going to happen, but I didn't know what it was or when it was. My senses were extra heightened. And this actually went on for at least a good year, possibly two, before I, randomly, I actually, interestingly enough, I went and tried to get some cranial sacrum work, and that helped a little bit. But, along with the anxiety kind of kicked in PTSD, and I literally thought I was going crazy. So I tried, cranial sacrum work. That helped a little bit. But, I just continued to ask the universe for help. I was just like, help me. I don't know what's going on. Until I ran into, randomly, this woman popped into my life. And, I had done years of therapy. I had done years of 12-step work. I'd done a lot of work on myself. And so that was part of it, that I was like, what the heck is going on? Because I was still doing some of that stuff, and nothing was working. And then I ran into this lady, and the first thing I said to her was like, turn this off. I didn't know what I was talking about, but I was like, turn this off. And she explained to me that, about energy work, energy healing. And she was a spiritual counselor, but she started doing energy healing on me. And she said, no, you don't want to turn it off. And I said, well, I can feel absolutely everything all at once, help me. So she started to remove the energy that was stagnant in my body, that was creating that dark night of the soul, that, all my intuitive channels were just wide open. And I had energy that was stuck in my body that didn't know any different from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and it had lit up in my body. And so that was the beginning. And from there, I started to get training. I learned about energy work. The dark night of the soul, it's extreme. It is extreme. And I liked what you said, Peyton, about it's not a bad day. It's not, being extra tired. Dark night of the soul is, and it can be different, but for me, it was all my psychic senses lit up. It was like a big warning sign. Mayday, mayday, mayday. You're not in the right place. You need to shift, And I couldn't manage it. I just couldn't. And until I found an energy healer. So from then, I did put myself in classes. I found that lady had explained to me what energy was, how it worked, that, the years of therapy, 12-step work, all of that stuff was great. However, it didn't didn't treat the energy that was stuck in my body. And I think that too is a dark night of the soul, is when we are being directed to a different path, and the energy and all the thing that triggers it is all the energy that was related to whatever it is you're feeling or going through, just lights up. And so from then I started getting training, because I just knew that I couldn't continue to walk around feeling the way I was, feeling absolutely everything. I just knew I was done. And I literally was just like, universe, help me. I don't know. I didn't know what to do. So the energy work was a lifesaver. So yes, when you're going through a dark night of the soul, one, look at videos so that, when it happened for me, there wasn't really a lot of videos out to explain what was going on. First was, look at some videos. We have so many videos that talk about energy, how it affects you, in different areas of your life and all other subjects really. But just to start acknowledging or find out, what is going on. So videos and finding an energy healer or a worker that can help locate what really is stuck or going on, can explain it to you and start healing it or removing the energy that's stuck. Because when it took that, for me, it took me 2 sessions before I was even able to even remotely have like my toes in my body. And then, finding classes to learn about energy, because yes, it's amazing to get an energy worker, healer, to help you explain and also start healing some of that energy. But what happens after that? We're still released out into the world, so to speak. And I've seen a lot of my clients, that is what has happened to them, where they have gone to energy healers and teachers and then released out into the world again and not knowing how to maintain a sovereign space, because energy is either ours or not ours. We don't know this, I mean, I wasn't raised that way. So finding classes that you can take. A lot of my clients end up being students of mine and Yaila's, because we need to learn how to manage our own energy and how to protect our energy. And it's also a discovery of who we are. And I really believe that the dark night of the soul is a complete reconstruction of who you are, redoing your beliefs, getting rid of the old beliefs that we've had that no longer serve us. And then the last thing is to remember to always have self-care and compassion for yourself. Because when you feel like you're going crazy, or like Peyton was saying, really just depressed, and you start doing energy work on yourself or learning it, have compassion with yourself. It took a long time to get where you were, and it doesn't change overnight. But the journey is so worth it, because, we're all sitting here, us ladies are sitting here right now, having had a dark night of the soul and done a lot of that inner work. It's a very big sign that inner work needs to be done. And society doesn't teach us that inner work is really important, though it is coming out more now. But have compassion with yourself. And if you need to rest. If you need that nap. And feed yourself good food. That always helps. It helps a lot, that self-care that we need when we're going through that dark night of the soul. And the last thing is, it does change. It feels like when you're in the dark night of the soul that our world is ending and we're never going to get through it. But we do. And we come out a lot brighter and a lot shinier. So what have you got, Yaila?
You ladies are so brilliant. What do I have to follow after all of those great tips? So for me, the dark night of the soul is similar to what Corey and Peyton were sharing. The best way I can describe it is I actually feel like I had two in my lifetime. For me, a dark night of the soul is when you are coming into a new connection to your own self as a spiritual being. So some people call it the ego death. There's different forms of thought out there that you can connect with. Some people call it a Kundalini awakening. You know, you're just kind of more tapped into other realms, new energy, yourself as a spiritual being. And that's why I find in agreement with Peyton and Corey, where it happens at the beginning of your spiritual journey. So the second piece to that is, yes, it's, you know, it's not just having a bad week or a slow week. For me, the dark night of the soul tends to last a few, that I've seen in myself and other people, a few months to even a few years. So depending on just your journey and kind of how it goes, and how many things are crashing around you, need to come back into alignment, come back on board. You know, it takes a few months to a few years to kind of get everything fully back on board. So it's something as far as your new level of consciousness is, you're awakening to a new level of yourself and your new connection to all that is. You're also not recognizing old ways of how you saw yourself and you saw your life are now moving into new, different ways. And there's that kind of in-between process. And then the third thing I would say is, when you're in that process, you don't know what outcome is coming. Sometimes you don't have the answer to the next step. You don't have the answer to the new level. You don't have the answer to what that new spiritually awakened self looks like. And that's why it feels dark. Like there's literally, you don't know which direction you're going to turn. So for me, my dark night of the souls were starting out. I was managing a restaurant at the time, and I decided to do Rolfing, which is when you read about Rolfing, it's kind of like deep tissue massage is the best way I can describe it, but it talks about aligning the fascia on your body. So your body's just more in alignment. That's on the physical realm. However, when you first do Rolfing, it's like 10 weeks and there's a theme for each week. You're not told about it. Or at least I wasn't, through my practitioner. And my whole purpose of it, I knew there was a spiritual element to it, and I was curious. And you know, I think when people step into their spiritual journey on a conscious level, like a conscious choice stepping into it, we think it's going to be sunshine and rainbows, right? Watch our video on myths of spiritual awakening. It taps into some of that. So I thought it was going to be like this really great, beautiful experience. It was not at all. So I was going through this Rolfing process, managing a restaurant. I knew going into it, it wasn't where I saw myself in the future. However, on paper, it sounded great, whatever. Not going to go too much into the story. So going through Rolfing, you know, your body there, the whole premise of it is your body holds, your cells in your body hold physical and emotional memories. And so when you're going through Rolfing, it's releasing these memories and basically putting you physically back in alignment, but it's also putting you back in alignment on an energetic, spiritual level as well. And so I didn't understand the depths of that when I started it. I just felt called to do it. Halfway through, or almost all the way through, I ended up quitting my job with no other job lined up. But it was so physically unbearable to be in that position. I couldn't do it anymore. Like, even if I wanted to, and I tried to fake it to make it for months, it was just so uncomfortable that when push came to shove and I was confronted with having to make a decision, I had to step away and say no, even though I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent without anything else lined up. So I call the dark night of the soul. I kind of blew my life up. I call it blowing your life up. Your life blows up. There's no end sight. There's nothing to see afterward. My second dark night of the soul was a very similar thing. When I quit my job as a health coach, and it was a conscious choice to do both of these things. I saw my life was out of alignment. I thought I had the second time around, you know, the next steps lined up. However, when I came into that free time, I went through a second dark night of the soul where I tell my friends and people around me, I slept for a year and a half, basically, because it took so much energy of mine to kind of recalibrate after functioning in life another way of running energy that just wasn't in alignment with me, that my body just crashed. And in the beginning of the dark night of the soul, I used to beat myself up, like, what's wrong with me? I have all this time. I can start my business now. I mean, there's all these things that run through your head. And then you think you're ridiculous for having these thoughts like, could I really do this? And why did I think I could do this? This is not what other people do. So your dark night of the soul, you're really going to question yourself. You're going to question yourself on every aspect. You're not going to have the answers like you used to get. Even if you have some type of spiritual practice put in place. My second dark night of the soul, I started energy work classes. I was already in classes and I knew how to ground and run tools, but I still hit a dark night of the soul because there was a recalibration process that I had to come into alignment with. So it comes about even if you have every intention to avoid it, even if you may have gone through one previously, your life will explode. Think, relationships end, jobs end, moving locations happen. There's a lot for some people. They actually, when they're going through a journey, relationships, it's not just breakups, but it is people in their life have transitioned to the other side. They lose their support system in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot that happens that kind of crumbles around you when you're in this place. And so it's very scary. You don't know where you're going to go and you don't know how you're going to get out of it. So that's how you know you're in it. Much to, what Corey and Peyton were saying, as far as like, learn some tools, do the energy work. That was the one thing that I was staying in practice with once I knew those tools. And I feel like it probably saved me a few years of moving out of that dark night of the soul. The beginning, I beat myself up for wanting to rest, wanting to sleep. And after I just became okay with letting myself do that, I kind of let myself off the hook. Energy started moving faster. And so when you feel like you're in a dark night of the soul and kind of it feels like a depression, you're to me, I got numb, when my senses were heightened when I first started classes. And then when I hit my dark night of the soul, it got really numb to where the only thing I could do was just sleep. I took several naps a day. So once I started giving myself permission just to do that, then the energy started moving faster. And then I could actually see what was trying to come in because I wasn't so focused on what was wrong and what I wasn't doing and what I needed to be doing. I just let myself be in the moment, be as present as I possibly could, keep my energy as clear as I possibly could. And that's when the answers started to show up. That's when the next step started to come in. That's when I started to come back on board with what was in alignment versus what wasn't working. And it was a process. So in addition to, finding a healer, taking some classes, I would say giving yourself that time to rest. For me, depression just means deep rest. There's nothing, it's part of our journey. And when a lot of us are trying to mask ourselves going through that process, not really feeling the emotions, kind of disconnecting, we prolong the process. And on a collective level right now, we're kind of going through a dark night of the soul on a collective level. There's a lot that's changing. There's a lot new awarenesses coming in, and we're feeling it on these different levels. So we can go through a dark night of the soul as an individual, and then we're also going through it as a collective at this current time. So just know if you're not sure where that light is at the end of the tunnel, it feels like everything's crumbling around you. A lot of transition is happening, whether it's physical location, jobs, people in your life. Just know that things are being readjusted and realigned, and it's always a sign that the next level, your new step above or step forward, is coming in. So what's coming to the surface now is ready to be healed. And the biggest piece is just be present, keep your energy clear, finding that daily practice of just connecting in with yourself. And the answers will start to come when you just start being curious and letting yourself ask the questions, breaking it down into smaller chunks, because sometimes we want that final answer now. We want that final step. We want to be moved through it. And sometimes that's way too big of a bite to try and take. We need those smaller bites. So I would break it down today. Where can I focus today? Getting me closer, knowing, I want this in my life. What do I need today? And sometimes it was just to rest and let myself rest. Other days it was go to the ocean. Other days it was take a walk in the park. Another day it was, hey, write a bio about this and send it out to a colleague that you have, so there was things that started to come in once I gave permission to just trust that the current place I was in was exactly where I was meant to be. So that's what I would add. But ladies, how about anything else that you want to add to Dark Night of the Soul?
Yeah, I think self-care is really hugely important, because we tend to blame ourselves and shame ourselves when we need that timing. But usually when we're going through a dark night of the soul, those things that are being removed from our life are things that have been so out of alignment for so long, and we have just been fighting it and fighting it, and our body needs time to release that. And as we always say in energy work, we can advance spiritually much faster than our bodies can advance. And so it's really important just to give your physical vehicle time to catch up with the changes. So if you need to nap, if you need to take salt baths every day, meditation always helps because it gets you out of the monkey mind. So you can hear that guidance coming in, but double checking that you're not shaming yourself or getting into judgment when you need more rest or more just time out or to get away from certain people or things. Whatever you need, whatever nurtures you, is a great direction to move in when you're trying to move through a dark night of the soul. So that's one last thing I would add.
And I agree with you, ladies, both of you ladies. I don't really have anything more to add, but yes, self-care. Don't beat yourself up. Go ahead.
Sorry, Corey. I think part of that self-care too is, as much as we like to get advice, from people who've been there, sometimes you have to protect where you're getting advice from. And if we're trying to get advice from the people who, our world is kind of crashing around and they've been a piece of that previous world, sometimes they're the last people you want to get advice from. Not that you don't love them, not that you don't respect their opinions or their advice, but sometimes you need that kind of outside perspective to help, bring you your own answers and find your own answers. So just as part of self-care, watching who you're getting advice from. And sometimes how we get set up out of alignment is because we're listening to what you should be doing, and versus connecting to what we aligned ourselves to.
That's how you end up as a lawyer.
Right? Don't should all over yourselves. Don't should all over yourselves.
Or others.
Or others for that matter. Should be just taken out of the the English language.
Snip, snip. Yeah.
Yep.
We've all been guilty of that. Well, thank you so much for joining us for today. We hope talking about the Dark Night of the Soul was helpful for you. If you would like any additional support, but be sure to reach out to Peyton, Corey, or myself, and we're more than happy to help you. We have other videos and we all teach classes, so feel free to reach out. We thank you for joining us. If this was helpful, please like, share, comment, and we'll see you next week. Bye.